Hello and welcome to hobby vlog number 54. It's been a really busy week at work, but I have actually managed to get quite a lot of time at my desk, just here and there and everywhere. And I did have reason to count up the active projects I've got on at the moment, and I think it's either 6 or 7. So there's plenty for me to be getting on with. I've also got a guest this week. We've just been playing some games of DBA, which was a hell of a lot of fun. And we're going to get back to the gaming table very shortly. So I'm not getting much hobby time this weekend, but even better, I'm actually getting some gaming time, so that's much to be preferred. So I'll shut up now and let you enjoy the rest of the video, and I'll see you at the end. Suddenly realised I've only got a couple of days left before the little kind of challenge on painting all the miniatures, which I've started painting these up for, is actually supposed to be over. So I'm going to get as much of it done as possible. If I don't make it, I don't actually mind, because I use it as inspiration rather than entry as such. But I would still like to get this done if possible. So I'm going to do a little bit more painting. We'll just leave the camera running again and try to get this as complete as I possibly can before the deadline. So I'm trying to do both. The base for the actual puppeteer is upstairs and will need to be worked on as well. So I almost certainly won't make my deadline, but at the very least I'm going to try. I admit that I've just practiced this on the other platform. So yeah, I did actually give this technique a go, and it worked just like I thought it would, with no problems, which is really, really heartening. So let me show you what I'm doing. This is going to be trimming down these platforms so that they're the right shape, because clearly, obviously, I made them oversized deliberately. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got a couple of clamps, and I'm going to clamp them in place so that I have wood under the edge and underneath everything. That was easy for me to say. Okay, so with that clamped, what we do is we get some masking tape and we're going to mask around underneath where the cuts are going to go. The purpose of this is to hold the woods together, hold the coffee stirrers together, so when I'm cutting them, they don't all kind of go off in different directions and vibrate themselves into pieces. It's actually going to be easier on this one to do it from the bottom, butting it up against the matchstick, and then we can definitely get it straight. So we're going to put some masking tape around each end. So I'll get that done. There we are. With that masked up, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to draw against my template where I want the cut to go, which is another benefit of the masking tape, because it will enable me and help me to draw this line on a little bit more accurately. So we just draw that line across there, and then the other end. There we are. So that's where we're going to cut. With that done, we can get rid of our template, and now we can see where we're going to cut. So I will do this, and I will mute the microphone because it's going to be loud, but I have a Dremel. I don't have a wood cutting implement, so this is actually a metal cutting implement, but it does it okay. So I'll now put some music on, just because this is not a very nice sound, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting along these lines so that they're going to be in the right place. So let me get that done. There we are. You can see the benefit of having the masking tape from when it got away from me a little bit, because it's not the right cutting tool. You need to be really careful, but also it basically meant that the whole thing stayed together. So now we peel that off, you can see that we now have a really nice cut, which is the right size and exactly where I want it to be, and will go against the edge of the board, like so, which is out of shot that you can't see, but it certainly does. So what I'm now going to do is do the other cut, and then I will also put some the music on so that this isn't too horrendously noisy. So let me just get that cut done, and then I'll show you the next step. There we are. So you can see that you can cut really carefully with the Dremel, so long as you are careful, and it will cut and it will leave the masking tape at the back still attached, which is very useful, and it proves that as well you're not going to be causing any damage to the bit of the platform that you want to save. So we'll peel all that masking tape off, and there we are. We have our platform. Now that one is, so let me just get myself together, bring the other board over, and I'll show you what the next steps are. There we are. So this is how it's going to work, and you can see that that is absolutely spot on. So they join like this. So that one comes in down here, this one comes like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some matchsticks, and I'm going to run a matchstick along this end and glue it so all the way along the front and glue it there. And I'm going to put another one across here at this angle there. So I'll get that done, and I will do that when I've got my I've not got my matchsticks to hand. So I'll just gather my matchsticks, get everything together, and I'll show you how I'm going to glue that. There we are. So we have these two arranged now in the correct place, and I've put it on top of a plate so that it's a little more stable and I can weight it down. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a matchstick there, and I might actually even get one of my long matchsticks. And we're going to put another matchstick coming across here. So that's going to then mean that these two are going to be joined together nice and securely, and then I can offer them, I can then basically sit them on top of a platform that I will build behind the palisade. So that's how that's going to work. And I'll be able to trim some of these off once I've built the cross piece. So this key, which fits in there, will be created once this is secure. So that'll be the next task after this. So I'm going to grab myself a long matchstick and trim it down, and then I will glue those in place. I'm just going to use super glue. There's no point in using anything else. And then I'll probably cover it with PVA as I did for the other ones, just to add the extra security. So we will mark how long we want this to be. And then trim that down, just using my sharp Stanley knife. So I'm going to split the wood, but it still will give me the strength I need, so I'll get rid of that. So let's get some PVA, some super glue on this, and then we'll leave it to go off. So I'm going to bead a PVA, I keep saying PVA, bead a super glue along here, like so. And then carefully drop the matchstick in place like that. There we are. And then, should have had that out of the way before I did that. There we are. And then we'll run a little bit of super glue along the matchstick, make it a bit easier for me to put in. Then drop that in place as well, and then we'll weight it down, and then we'll leave it for an amount of time. There we are. Good. So now I'm going to weight that. Actually, I'm just going to hold it, because I'm going to be able to be more accurate holding it than I would with weight, and super glue does go off quite quickly. So I will stop the camera now, and I will bring you back when I do the next step. As I push on with finishing the puppeteer, I need to complete the base as well, which is this. So what I've got is the Dusty Sand coloured paint, which comes off wet like that and dries into a really nice dusty shape. And I'm going to dry brush that over the entirety of the wood. It really ages it down very quickly, but it keeps that lovely rich colour still coming through from the stain. So I'm going to do that for all of the wooden bits, and then do some detailing, and then it'll be time to stick them together. This is very, very nearly done. There we are. So So that's done. So I'll pack that away and then I'll bring you back for the next step very shortly. The next step is going to be using this dark red paint, and I'm going to use it to do something a little bit like blood stains. So I'm just going to put some marks on the wood like this to look like dried blood and other potentially nasty bodily fluids. Just a few. And then on the platform itself, and what I will do is come along with some brighter red to highlight this, but this is the dried outline of it. Good, so that's now pretty much how I want it to be. What we're going to do is we're going to glue this in place, and the way it's going to be glued is going to stand like that, and the ladder is going to come up from the side like so. It's going to be at a slightly wonky angle is the idea. Then the puppeteer will be stood up here and the puppet will be down here. So you'll look at it from the front like that, with the puppeteer at the top and the puppet down here, and it's going to look great. So I'll let that last little bit of dried blood paint dry, get myself a little bit of red and wash it on that with that as well, bring you along for that stage. But yeah, and then that will be this done. I am thinking of draping something over the front as well, maybe putting like the puppeteer and having that on a bit of cloth, but I'm not sure. If I get the time, I'll do that and I'll bring you along for that as well. So once again, I didn't turn on my microphone. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to finish off the paint job on this display board for my oak and iron ships. So I'm using the same mix as I do normally. I've got the raw umber, some dark green and some blue. Mix it together to make a really nice deep green with some tinges of brown and blue in it, which is just what I like for my sea. And what I'm going to do is basically paint it all over the base that you have there, and try to avoid as best I can, though I don't do a very good job of it, the cardboard where the ships are going to go, because I want them to remain clear so that I can see what ship I want to sit where, basically, to remind myself. So I'll just slap this paint all over it. This is dried overnight, which I didn't expect it to. I thought I would have to wait until this evening to get this stage done, but that's not a bad thing, because now I can do the final step, which is painting in the tops of all of the waves. So all I've got is some white paint, and I won't do all of this on camera because it's going to probably be done through the day, because yeah, I don't have all that much time right now. I just wanted to get started, but basically what I'm going to be coming in and doing is not quite dry brushing, but certainly not putting very much on, and just picking out all of these tops of all of these waves, and particularly where I want the wake to be. And one of the reasons why I'm going to take a little bit of time doing this is because I want it to dry so I can see how it looks. So I'll just do a little bit at a time and then come back and add a little bit more, a little bit more. It's going to be a very patient task, this. It's going to take a little bit of time because I don't want to ruin it now, not this close to finished. But yeah, we're basically just going to be picking out details like that. So let me just zoom that in. There we are. You can see the effect that I'm going for. Just the top of all of these little bits. It doesn't want to be a dry brush because that would be too over the top. So I'm really picking things out very carefully, specifically highlighting where I want to highlight. And yes, so that'll look really good. So I'll get that done and I'll bring you along to show you what it looks like when it is finished. So I'm down in the painting room on an evening, which is unusual for me, but the reason is I need to finish this, because if I'm going to get this done for the challenge for Paint All the Miniatures, which is the reason why I started it, which would be a bit silly not to do it for that, I need to finish it tonight really so that I can mount it tomorrow and get it entered. So I'm going to get that done. So I'll run the camera, probably won't say very much, probably just do a speeded up section, but let's see whether we can get this finished. So unfortunately I made a bit of a mistake with filming and the camera wasn't running when I was working on this, which is a bit of a shame because it was quite a thing. What I've done here is I've got 2 long matchsticks and another one, and I actually made use of the template to glue this. So I laid the template down and I very carefully glued it all together using a mix of super glue and some PVA. It's now a lot later in the day and I'm coming to actually do the planking over the top of it, and I'm really annoyed that at the end of when I'd made it I found I hadn't recorded it. So this is going to be sitting in here, so in that gap in between, and the planks are going to go crossways like that. So it's going to be, I mean, I can make it as deep as I wish in one sense, but it's going to go roughly to around here, roughly to actually where the other end of the this middle matchstick is. I wanted that matchstick to be a little bit more round, but how I'd trimmed down the edges and the angles, that's just how it sat, and it's fine. So I'm going to now sit, and I'm probably not going to run the camera because it's going to be a bit fiddly, but I might do for a bit, and I'm going to glue coffee stirrers across. And let me just grab them. So I will literally be trimming, I'll probably be trimming them down as I go, but I literally, again, won't really be caring about trying to make them too accurate, because I'll come along with the Dremel again and trim the edges off and make it nice and neat. So that's the plan. So I'm just going to come along like this. Don't know what happened then, didn't want to open, but I've managed to get it open now. So what I'll be doing is I'll be coming along, trimming down some of the coffee stirrer, put a blob of super glue on in there, and then set it on top like that, and then we'll do the same again, measure it roughly, trim it, bit of super glue like so, and then drop it in place. So I will get that done and I'll bring you back when I'm done and when we're ready to glue them together, but we're making really good progress here now. So this is actually quite amusing. I've just come to the base to glue it on, and I have found that I have a little visitor. Let me zoom in. Look. So this is supposed to be a spooky build, and I got a spider in it. There he is. I hope there's no arachnophobes watching this, because yeah, there he is. He's only teeny tiny, barely see him, but he's definitely taken up residence, and he's not very happy with me for moving the tower around. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue the tower to the base and the ladder to the tower and the base. I'm going to use super glue for that, and then I'm going to let that go off, because then tomorrow first thing I'll be able to glue the puppeteer and the marionette in place, and then drop the string down to between the puppeteer and the marionette, and then done. Pretty much. So yeah, very exciting. So I'm going to glue that in place, and then I'll bring you along to, I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I've glued them on. You can see that there's a 50s Stinky piece just tucked in behind, just to keep him from tumbling over a little bit, because I wanted to have the back of his coat floating. Unfortunately, the spider had moved out when I got up this morning, which is a shame. I was very careful yesterday, but he's obviously decided it's just too risky, particularly with such a spooky looking marionette and puppeteer going in place. I'm really pleased with how this works. It's really turned out nicely. Let me get a couple of zooms in, and then I've got one more thing that I want to still do, which is to put this sewing thread and to join between the marionette's control and the fingers and hands on the puppeteer's controls on the marionette. So yeah, let me get a little zoom in on the puppeteer first. So there he is. He's turned out pretty much how I wanted him to. The purple, dirty purple coat and the shock of flaming hair. I'm pretty pleased with how he's come out. Probably the hardest miniature I've ever painted, just because of how hard it was to actually hold while painting. I probably needed to have taken it more easily and been able to do it in smaller steps to make it a little bit of an easier job. So let's have a quick look at the actual puppet. There he is, the little dude. he was an easy paint job, and I'm very pleased as well. I've tried to mimic the colour of the puppeteer's hair, used the same colour on his coat, but yeah, he's was a very simple paint job, and just is a splash of colour and brightness after the dirtiness of the puppeteer. So I'll let that now go off, just glued on with super glue, and then I'm going to try to do that thread, and then that will be completely done. I have a few minutes at the end of my lunch, and so now I'm going to try and attempt the impossible. I have my thread, and I have my puppeteer, and I have my marionette down below. And what I'm going to be trying to do, try and be in the operative word, and if it doesn't work, then I will just give up, because I'm not going to ruin the whole thing for this, but I'm going to give it a go, is I'm going to attempt to secure the thread to the bottom of his his guide there, and then drop it down and then secure it to the actual puppet. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm only going to do this on one, and if it works then I'll do it on the rest, is I've got a little bit of super glue on a cocktail stick, which I can just dab on underneath there. Like so. And then what we'll do is, and again, clumsy fingers here, might struggle with this, is we will then put that and hold it into the super glue and then let go. There we are. So that now is attached to there. So I'm going to let that go off for a couple of minutes, and then I'll come back, focus to the bottom, snip it and attach it to the actual marionette. So I'll bring it back in a second. Let's see if we can manage this. So that's dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along and I'm going to snip the thread too long if my scissors will cut it. Here was me thinking these were the right scissors to use. Clearly not. For the future, I'm not going to use those scissors for the next steps. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll get my super glue, and this is going to go on the little dude's arm. So I'll put a little dot of super glue on his hand, and then once more what we'll do is get it to touch if we can. There we are. Nope, that didn't work. This is fiddly. I don't know how well this is staying in focus, because I've focused it closely and now my hands are getting in the way. There we are. There we are. So that's now glued to his arm. So once that's gone off, what I'll do is I'll come in, I'll snip both ends, and then that will look great. Wow, there we are. And then what I'll do is I'll do the other side. I'm probably going to put another bit of thread down back to his elbow. Apologies for the banging, the men are working outside. And then I'll probably do his other hand being controlled by the other side, and just do it as simply as that. So I'll bring you along when that's done. I have one further thing to add to this once I've finished doing the lines, which is a real stretch. But I want to get this, I want this to look really good. I'm really, really pleased now with how well this is turning out. With this build now at this stage, it's going to split into a couple of different videos. I'm going to continue with the terrain, and these will build up, and then suddenly in the video for the terrain you'll have some painted miniatures and a couple of painted cannons, because I'm going to do those in separate videos, maybe one, maybe two videos. I will show you what I'm going to do. I'm planning on painting the pirates and the privateers, and they will get a boat, and I'm planning on the defenders being unaligned, so they will be the ones defending the land. And this will eventually be quite a nice little display board with a boat here, and some of the miniatures charging and some of the miniatures defending and what have you. So it'll be a nice little display board. What I have for my cannon, I have two options. I bought this for the lake build, potentially to drop into the water, but when I put it next to my other cannon, it's massively out of scale, so I'm not going to use that one. That can go back into its box, and what I'll be doing is I'll pull two cannons out of the Blood and Plunder boat and make use of those, and then they can be either here or on the boat. I think I may have another couple of spares coming as well, but I can always order some more if I need to. So I'll continue focusing on the terrain build, but at the same time I'm going to be working on painting up some miniatures to dress this board with. So I just thought I'd show that, so that when they do appear, you understand when I started, and also understand where they came from. As part of this fortification build, I'm going to be making some painting up some troops and doing some bits and pieces on the side. Now, this video is going to be a different one to the actual main build because it'll be painting miniatures. I don't want to clutter that one up, but I just wanted to show what I'm going to be doing. I've just had a quick look through. I've decided I'm going to go for some from the privateers and some from the unaligned box set. Now I'm picking the privateers because that one comes with the cannon crew. So the privateers and the European sailor musketeers will be inside the camp, and then on one boat, which is all I've got at the moment, we will have freebooters and flibustiers, which will be coming in to try to attack the camp. So I'm going to go now and just prepare these. I'm going to get them primed up and that. I'm not going to film that, just be using the normal standard grey Vallejo primer, get these cleaned up and primed. I've also got a couple of cannon here which I've taken out of a set, the set that comes with the what's the name of it? Frigate, that's it, the frigate. Sorry, I'm quite tired, as you can probably tell. It comes with a frigate kit, so I'll be painting these two up, both these blisters, and also the longboat. So I'll get them prepared tonight, and then I'll bring you back when I come to actually put some colour on them. The final step on the puppeteer, and I was going to show you this, but I got distracted with work and left the hot glue gun turned on, and so it's actually done it for me without me having to touch it. So I'll just show you what I've done. Is I've got some little kind of like bits of hot glue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint those bright red, and then they're going to be blood which will be dropping from the marionette's hands, because it's not actually a marionette. Actually a real person, real boy, and that's the horror. Just a little touch. So I'm going to get that painted now with bright red, and then I'll glue it in place, and then I'll bring you along to show you the final thing. We're so close now, and the finishing touches are done on this piece, and I'm really pleased with how it's looking. You can see that the puppeteer is in place correctly, and the puppet underneath, the marionette. But what you can't see probably from that zoom, so let me just zoom down and in, is that I've actually put in place the blood dripping from the marionette, and put some fresh blood underneath where it's dripping to. That's not perfect. I probably should have used a hair or something and gathered some PVA glue, let that dry, and then painted it. But it certainly gives the impression that I'm trying to give, and it's the first attempt, so I'm pretty pleased with how that's turned out. Certainly what using hot glue and then painting it for blood for a larger scale certainly would look really good. It makes a really good effect. It was very hard to get it thin enough though. So there we are, that's done. I've also done the ghostly summons, so I'll swap over, turn the lights off, and which you'll see why in a minute, and you can see that also. So here we are. Here is the ghostly summons, and again, really pleased with how this has turned out. What I'm going to do now is turn off all the lights that I have around. So give me a second. And what you can see, if you can excuse the banging, the workers are outside my door. What you can see is that it is glowing. I have made use of some green stuff world pigment, and I mean it's not dark enough now because it's during the day and I've just got the shutters down, but it really does look good when it's in pitch black, and I'm very pleased. So there we are, that's the ghostly summons. If you remember, we worked out that the height of the palisade needed to be about 4.5 centimetres. So we wanted it so that it would be, he would be able to look over it when he stood on it to shoot a gun, but be below it when he stood behind it. So about 4.5 centimetres I think is going to be right. So what I have here is I am going for the balsa wood. I bought it, I need to use it. And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to put some music on in a bit, or put a film on or some YouTube, and I'm just going to come along with a sharp blade like this. And it doesn't have to be too neat because, again, this doesn't want to be too much of a tidy build. So let me just do this. And I'm going to cut lots and lots of 4.5 centimetre lengths. Like this. And if some of them are a little bit longer, I'll leave them. And I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to work out how many I need, because I don't know quite exactly what the length is I need. Maybe I should work that out soon. There will need to be some drop down bits where the guns are going to go. I am going to stick just with the cannon. I have taken delivery of some field artillery, but I don't want the field artillery on this, so it's just going to be the 2 cannon. So I'll work out where those are going to be and cut a couple of shorter ones for that. But yeah, I'm just going to get stuck in. So I'll bring you along when it's done and when I'm about to glue them in. There's no point in you sitting watching me do that for the next probably 30 minutes or so at least. So yes, I'll bring you in at the end and when we're about to glue it. Well, that was a fun 25 minutes or so. I don't know if I've cut enough, but I'm going to stop for the time being because I don't want to waste my my balsa. I also cut and glued together some sections of some lengths of the matchstick. So these are the 3 lengths that I've got to build the palisade for. And what I'm going to be doing, and I'll do this very quickly and then I'll turn the camera off and get it done off camera, is I will be putting it at about 2 centimeters up, just under 2 centimeters up, so that there's about 2.5 to 3 centimeters above the level of the floor. So maybe actually even a little bit lower, maybe about 1.5 centimeters. There we are. So I'm going to get some super glue, and we're going to glue this support on like that. And then when that's gone off, I will glue another one at the other end. Actually, I might lift it, see if I can. No, I'll wait for it to go off. And then what I'll do is I will then glue all the rest of the palisade to this, and I'll do the same for this one and for this one. So when that's done, then I'll be able to put it onto the base here, and I will probably build it up a little bit with some air drying clay. This is warping quite badly, as you can see. I'm going to have to do something about that. I'm not sure what yet, but I'll build up a little bit of air dry clay, put a little bit more of the sand colour on, and then we'll be pretty much there. I probably will stain it before I stick it in place, so that's probably going to be the next step. So I'll get all of these glued, and then we'll look at staining, and we'll move on from there. So yeah. So really good news. I've started painting up my miniatures, as you can see, and I've decided to just make sure that my scales were correct, which you may think is a little bit late, but I was quite confident on my measuring. So what will happen is that will sit there on top of that ledge. So if I turn that round and attempt to hold that in place, and then pop Mr. Miniature on there, you can see that the height is pretty much perfect. I'm actually just a little bit out of focus there, so let me just do that. Yeah, so the height is pretty much perfect for that guy. He's behind some of the lower ones, and it's and yeah, he's going to look good. So what I need to do now is cut out for the cannon, which is going to go, one of which is going to go here, and one of which is going to go here. So I'll have to do that on the palisade, and then I will be able to glue that in place and secure it, and then start staining it. So yeah, good progress. Now then, these have been painted with PVA since the last time I filmed. I just did it very quickly, put a full coat of PVA all over the back just to give it a little bit more stability. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to stick them down and stick them actually to the framework. And I'm going to use hot glue for this, which is not a tool I normally use, but I think it's going to work well in this case. So all I'm going to be doing is pushing a bead of hot glue across the top where I want it to sit, and then press that down onto it, basically like that. Okay, and then anything that goes over the edge can obviously be cleaned up. But that's also going to be a really quick way of doing it, as you can see. It doesn't take long. So run a bead of the hot glue along like that. This is the cold hot glue that I bought on Luke's recommendation, and then press it down in. And the observant among you have noticed that I've not yet done the holes for the guns, and that's because I want to do it after I get this in, because I might put another reinforcing bar across above here, and then I might cut out between this bar and that bar just so that it's actually a bit more stable. So now we press that down in like that, and that is done. There we are. We have a palisade. Look at that. Very, very pleased. Right, so I'm going to let that go off, do a few other bits and pieces of different hobby activity, and I'll come back to it potentially, and I will do the staining and show you the next steps. It's time to show off another scroll. You can tell both my parents were teachers. So this is for the Encounter 10x10, and this is my idea. The subject is "This will please the gods." And obviously lots and lots of people are doing lots and lots of cool things, and I probably have no chance of winning, but it's not that, it's about taking part. And after a bit of thought, I was inspired by some ideas, and the one idea that stuck was the one I'm going to do, which I'm going to show you. I had another idea based around the awesome opening scene of Troy, the scenes in Troy when Achilles races to the beach, goes and takes the temple of the name of the god's gone from me, the sun goddess, and is stood there surrounded by bodies, and I was going to try and model that scene. However, I just don't have the time just don't have the time to really do something of that scope, as awesome as it is. So that's gone into the backlog of my mind as awesome things to do in the future. And what I'm going to be doing is something a little more tragic, a little more touching, and a little smaller. So what we have here is we have a hovel, just the facade of a hovel, and stood at a doorway, which will probably just be a cloth because they don't have a proper door, is going to be this family, probably. I have some other miniatures coming that I've ordered in a panic because I don't have everything I need, and they're on their way. But I think it probably will be this miniature here. So there's a woman there with a baby in arms and a young child, and they're just going to be stood by the door watching down this track, which is what this is, a dirt track. On either side of the track will be cracked earth and dead crops. It's going to be a failed crops. Stood here is going to be a pig. I wasn't sure what I was going to offer, but it might not be a pig, it might be something else, but at this stage I'm planning on a pig. And here, which is what my urgent order is, so I'm really hoping it arrives in time, is going to be a man leading the pig. This will please the gods. They're hoping that their sacrifice of their pig, which probably, looking at how poor they are, is the only thing they actually own, will placate the gods and will bring the rains and will recover their crops. And what is more tragic than that? That fading last hope. So that's my idea. I really hope I can pull it off. I think it's a great subject. It's inspired me, as you can probably tell from my voice. So I'm going to get stuck into that. I'm going to start making it. I'm a little late starting. I've been so busy with work and with other things that I'm late starting on this. But hopefully the effort and time will be in small details, not large details, and I'll be able to do this quite quickly. So let's see. So there we are. Let's get some materials and get started. One thing that we all struggle with, and I'm sure we all struggle with it, is warping. And I am fed up with warping. It seems to be something which is really, really hard to control. So I've had an idea, I'm just going to try it out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, there's no harm, no foul. So what we've got here is we've got a 10 centimetre wide strip of 1 centimetre thick foam, as you can see. And what I've done is I've clamped it to some particle board. And I'm going to work on it like this. So I will mark out my 10 centimetres square. So we may as well bring it in 10 centimetres from that end to make it easier, and then to there. And that will be the extent that I will actually put my terrain on and do my work on, and then I'll cut it out after I've done it. And hopefully the fact of it being clamped down will mean that while things are drying, they won't constrict and won't contract, and then after it's all dried and all set, then I'll be able to unclamp it, and it won't be warped. So that's my plan. So that's the space I've got to work on. That's the size of the pig. That's the size of the people. It's going to be quite a challenge to fit everything in and tell the story, which is obviously Joe's genius of picking 10x10 as a challenge. Because if you had loads of space, it would be easy but you can see here that I'm probably going to have the facade flat, not at an angle, which is a shame because I like to offset things, but at least I can have the path going across and the failed crops on either side, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to now quickly sketch out on this what my plan is, and then I'm going to come along and do a little bit of scenicking and maybe try to do the house facade, and then I will also get these 2 miniatures primed. Even though I have another miniature that's not here yet, I can at least get these 2 miniatures primed and get started on painting them. So I will do the sketching and then I'll bring you along for the next step. So I've done a little bit more sketching, and what I've got is the idea for how I'm going to do the house. So the house is going to go at the back, and I'm going to use cardboard for that because I want it to be a quick build. I want it to be easy. I've done a little sketch just using the family as a template. The doorway will probably end up being slightly narrower than that, but basically what I'm going to do is have a flat front for the door. I'm going to do some thatching coming out, probably using old like cut and frayed ends of hemp cord, and that will just basically be glued to the back. So I might have to trim this down by just a couple of millimeters at the front, so else I go over the 10 by 10 and we don't want to cheat, do we? But it can glue at the back and that would be nice and secure. I can put pins through and make it really, really secure. And what I can probably do as well to prevent warping is have a couple of uprights that I can stick to the front as well and have into the terrain. So that's the plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that now while you're watching. So the width that I've worked out, is about 8 centimeters. So I'm going to be able to do a little bit of the changing in perspective, but not as much as I wanted. Now the height needs to be a little taller, but not too much taller than the family. So about 5 centimeters is going to be a good height, I think. So let's measure that up. And then let's measure 5 centimeters here and then cut that out. I have my safety ruler and I have my sharp Stanley knife, so I will use those to do this cutting. I have just realized that I did a boo-boo there, so I will keep that footage and we will do it again, because what I've done is I've cut it so it's the right height if I was to sit it on top, but I want a centimetre deeper, don't I? So I need to cut it 6 centimetres. So there's a lesson. Measure twice. Doesn't really matter if you don't think first. So think 3 times, measure twice, cut once. The other thing that I had paused while I was just doing that was thinking about how I'm going to do the eaves and how I'm going to support the thatched roof. So I have some thoughts on that which I'm going to develop in my mind. One thought is that I might just put a little strip across the top which will and just a little bit below, so that will enable that kind of angle to be generated. But now with this, the correct width and 6 centimeters, not 5 centimeters, this now will stick in correctly and look perfectly good. So let's get that prepared. So if I bring that forward, you can see that that is going to fit very nicely there, and I can glue that in, stick that through, and we've got ourselves our facade. So the next thing to do is to think about this doorway. So I'm going to mark 1 centimetre up. Actually, what I'm going to do, even easier, the better way of doing this is going to be for me to offer it up there and just draw a line. There we are. So that is where it's going to overlap the base and be glued. So what I can now do is work out roughly where I want to have the door, and I want to have the door not very central, but maybe I want the centre of the door to be about there. You couldn't see that. The centre of the door to be about there. Apologies, I was out of shot. I don't have my monitor set up properly. And I'm going to do the door 3 centimetres wide, just because that seems to be about right if we have a look at that. Maybe I'll do it 2, so it's a bit narrower, so it looks a little bit more uncomfortable. Yeah, let's do it 2 centimetres wide and 2.5. 2.5. That was a very, very rambly section, wasn't it? Sorry. And then we'll do it 4 centimetres high. Okay, what we'll now do is we will cut that out. So there we are. We have our front wall. The thing that I muttered about the eaves, I'm going to do now, and then we will glue this, and then I will be able to start thinking about the rest of the terrain. So what I'm going to do is cut a strip off of this sheet and glue it along the top, just to give it a little bit of a build out. This will be hidden underneath the eaves, so it's just going to be a little bit of support. There we are. So I will glue that now, just using PVA. So that will now be that will now support the material that I use to create the thatch effect. So we will clamp that and then let that to go off. Right, I'm going to gather myself, tied up here a bit, and I'll bring you back for the next step shortly. That was a very long clip. While that's drying, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to carve out the terrain. Now, I've also shaved off just that length, just that width, sorry, from the front, just so that I was definitely within my 10 by 10. So you can see now that the depth is now less than 10, just. Yep, a couple of millimetre less than 10, which is about the width of the house, so I'm going to stay with him. Though I do think you are actually allowed a 5 centimetre overhang, so maybe I didn't need to do that, but whatever, it's only a couple of millimetres. So I'm going to do very, very little in terms of depth on this, because it's supposed to be planes and flats and what have you. However, what I do want is just where I want to have the path, I'm just going to very, very lightly carve out a slight depression so that the garden around it is a little bit prouder. So I'm just going to take this down. I'll put some music on and take this down into a little dip. Okay, there we are. So now you can see where the path is going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some masking tape across here. I might just unclip this and wrap some masking tape around just along those edges. I think that will make it a little easier for me when I decide to remove, because I'll be able to take the masking tape up very carefully and then cut against the blue foam. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to mix up the terrain material which I'm going to use. And I'm going to use grout PVA mix and a bit of sand just across the whole thing, so that will both harden and give some texture, and it will be easy for me to paint and add my flock and static grass and everything else that I'm going to go to it. So I will get the masking tape on, mix up my my terrain, paint, and then I'll be back when I'm about to apply it. So I mixed up my grout with my sifted backyard sand and some PVA and some water. I slipped and put way too much water in, and I'm a little bit annoyed at myself because it's very watery, but it should still be okay, hopefully. So all we do for this, and I've also got way too much, it's a lot of waste. All we're going to do for this is just paint it on like that. And I may put some cling film over the top of this, because that does actually prevent it drying out enough. I've done it before. And then I'll be able to use this same mix for a second coat in the morning, because this is now me done for the day. I'm going to leave this to go off overnight. There we are. So I will probably, as I say, wrap some cling film over the top of that and let that to and leave that overnight, and I'll be able to reuse that in the morning. So yeah, let's just do that as well to seal it all off. So there we are, really good progress, really pleased with that to get started on it, and I'll bring you along for the next step when I get to it. But I'll just do the second coat in the morning without rolling the film. There's no point in showing exactly the same steps. So yeah, really, really cool. It's early the next morning and that has dried. However, I've not yet done the second coat because I had an idea. What I'm going to do is I have my largest gravel here, and I'm going to just use a little bit of PVA to stick some stones down onto where I'm going to have the garden. So it'll be not very good quality ground as well. So I'm just going to dab a few blobs of PVA on like this, not much, and I'm going to put
a stone in each one, so I don't want to overwhelm it. And then what I'll do is when I come to paint the remainder of the grout mix on, then I'll make sure to try to avoid these stones, and then I'll be able to pick them out and paint them properly later when I do the colouring. So we're just going to put some stones in like this. And the idea is I can build the grout up to them so they'll look like they're in the ground. The reason I'm doing this now rather than after I've done my second coat of grout. So there we are. Get that done. Wait for that to dry. Second coat of grout. And then I'll bring you back for the next step.
While the base is drying and before I get rid of the rest of the mix, I want to finish the front of the little shack, because I realise when I glue it on I'm going to want to put some mud and stuff in the front of it, which is going to be using the same material as I put on the base, so I need to get this done sooner rather than later. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how I'm going to stain this, and then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make and put the little bits of put this on here so that it looks like thatching. That's the word I was looking for, thatching. So I'm just going to use this technique. I've not done it before, so I want to try it out. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to paint some brown on. I'm just going to use my burnt umber or raw umber even, just for this, which is what I normally use for painting wood onto cardboard. So we'll grab a brush and we'll quickly paint that, and it won't take very long at all. So we'll just do that now. And this will then be dry brushed when it's dry with a lighter colour to add dust and what have you. But it's just going to be quite a dull brown, not going to look very nice at all. This poor family living in this poor house, not really able to paint their house. They're just glad to have one. So there we are. Good. Right, so I'll let that dry, and then I'll come along and I'll dry brush it with like a creamy colour, and then I'll bring you back along when I'm going to start doing the thatching. Look at that beautiful hovel front. So that was just basically me stippling on with my large dry brush with this kind of like a yellow, dark sandy yellow, and it's working. It looks really nice. It looks like an old knackered clapperboard house, which is what I was going for. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working on the edge of the roof, and to do this I'm going to snip off little sections of this string, and about a centimetre and a half long should be enough. So let me just get a load of those. That may be enough. We'll find out if it is or it isn't. Now I'll do most of this off camera because it'll be a bit dull to watch me doing this repetitively, but the idea is, as I understand it, is you kind of separate it out a little bit like that, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to glue it in place there. And I'm going to go along and do that across the whole thing. So we'll separate it out a little bit. Having it slightly uneven is part of the plan. This is, as I keep saying, this is a hovel. These are not rich people, and they are not going to have been able to really maintain their house to any level. So if it's not even, it doesn't matter. And what we'll do is we'll probably end up putting a second layer on top. So I'll glue this layer across like that now. I'm probably going to end up using PVA because I find it more forgiving, and then I'll just leave it in the sun to dry and then come and do the second layer. And I'll bring you along when I do the second layer so you can see what it looks like. So yeah, this is going to be good. I've let that dry. I've let that dry for like a week. I haven't touched it. So I've been busy on other things, but what I want to do now is get some paint on this. Now my plan is to I've decided to leave the mast so that I can remove it, because then I can have it either at sail, or I can have it in a harbour looking a bit kind of dishevelled. I'll put the cross beam on potentially, I'm not sure, I haven't decided that yet, but what I'm going to do now is just put some basic raw umber, I always say that wrong, raw umber over the entirety of it, because that is the colour of the wood that I want to go with. So we're just going to literally slaver that on. Now, sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed that I've not put any planks, or I've decided against putting planks on with coffee stirrers.
and yeah, I just don't think it needs it. The detail of the planks comes through even when you dry it. When you paint it thin enough, you can still see the planks coming through, so it would be an extra step which I don't want to do on this build. So I will get that done. The entirety of this is going to be covered in this paint, and then when that's dry I can come along and I can pick out some details to make it a little bit smarter if I want to. We will see. But this has been a good build, quick, and it's going to look very nice on the lake, but the lake is going to take months to finish, so it'll be a while before you see this set on that. But anyway, I'll stop muttering now and I'll just get this done. And there we are. That didn't take very long at all. So I'll let that dry and then we'll come back with the extra colours. I am going to actually, having said that, quickly paint up this as well. Cool, so I'll let those two dry and then we'll come back and have a think about what other colours I might want to do for detailing. But that's looking really cool. Very pleased with that. I have a couple of quick tests to do on this, which I'm going to get done now while I've just got a minute or two away from the desk. The first one is going to be to trim down these here so that I've got a little shooting gallery or shooting position for my cannon. Now I could have done this earlier and I hope I don't regret that I didn't do it earlier, but that's where I'm going to take out. So I'm going to take out these two and these two. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do it yet, so I'm going to have a quick bit of a think and then I will tell you what I did when I've done it. And I may bring you along for the second one. So there we are, that worked out okay. That was quite easy in the end. So what I did was I got a very sharp, this is a Citadel hobby knife, and very, very carefully worked it along until I'd removed one of them, and then the other one was easier to do. So I'll try to get the camera on it. I'll probably focus in and try to do it on camera, so hopefully you'll be able to see this process in a second. As you can see, what I've done is I have set this down so that it is flat on the cutting surface. The first thing that I'm going to do is separate at that end there, so run my knife in there. And then once I've got that separated, that's just taking the PVA out of the way so that it will move. I then basically was pushing my knife in like this, just to kind of carve away at it like that. It's not very easy. Possibly would have been easier to have worked this out before I glued things together. But I don't always do things in the easiest way. Here's proof. So once we've separated that, which you can see isn't so hard, it's then a little bit easier to work on the next one. So we'll separate this here, and then we just need to come along with the knife and kind of push it through. And then it should, we'll just cover it from this side a little bit. Very, very gentle, don't want to damage it. There we are. So just very, very carefully, and there it is. So now we have the other opening, and the cannon sits in it. It's a little bit, actually needs to be taken down a little bit further maybe. No, actually it should be okay. Should be okay. Cool. So that's that done. I've got my cannon spots. So the next thing it's going to do is I'm going to stain it. So I'll bring you along for that in a second. Painting and staining is going to be done in 2 stages. So this first stage might seem a little bit pointless because what I'm actually doing is staining it with pine. And it is pine, well it's not pine, it's just soft wood. But it will add a little bit of texture to the colour, and it will also just act as a sealant to keep it a little bit less likely of getting damaged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that over the entirety of the model. It will take maybe 2 or 3 coats to do this, and once I've done that, then what I'll be doing is I'll be putting on a darker colour onto the stakes where the bark would probably still be. So we'll stain this, we'll stain underneath. This isn't necessarily, as I say, just for colour, it's also for preserving and making sure that the model lasts. So yeah, I'll get that done and I'll bring you along when I come to the next step, which, as I say, is going to be applying the bark colour to the stakes. Shouldn't take me too long. So next step I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the hovel to the diorama, and the reason I'm doing this is because the leftover grout mix is starting to go off and I hate waste, so I'm just going to get this stuck in place very, very simply. PVA, push it into place and then get some dressmaker's pins and push through. Now I might find that I should really have started the dressmaker's pins off, and that will then mean that it just doesn't move and it is nice and secure. So let's just get that positioned and then push the pins in and we're done. I'll put one more at the other end. There we are. And there we are, so that hovel's now in place. So we'll let that go off and then we'll come back afterwards and fill in the gaps with the grout mix. So this is now it dried on, and I'm going to use the last of the grout mix to fill in the gaps at the end. The grout mix is now very, very dry, so it's almost a paste, which is actually quite nice to put down, as you can see. So I'm going to be able to fill in these gaps, build up over the edge, and fill in just under the bottom of the doorway as well. And that'll be a nice place to leave it today. Wasn't expecting to get any hobbying done, but when I saw this was going off, I thought I'd better just make use of this material before it goes off. So there we are, and we can put some more down on the rest of it. I might get a bigger brush, but I'll get that finished, use up all the rest of this material, and then leave that to go off overnight. Well, there we are, what a week that was. It's been a really good day as well today. I've just finished playing a game, a strategy battle game, Middle Earth, with Steve, and as it happened, he hammered me. But it was a really fun game, and that's all that matters to me. I never really play anything. I'd like to win, but as long as it's a good game, who cares if you lose? I am absolutely exhausted now. I don't think I've spoken this much for a long time, and I've had a great day and a great week of hobby. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I do always reply to every comment I receive, and it's a joy to hear from you all. So do drop a comment below, and I will thank you so much for watching this video. And please do stay safe, stay well, and stay healthy.